going to get started. Feel free to continue eating. This is a new format we're trying. We've done it before, I think last year, and we figure this is the beginning of the summer. We'll make it casual, but I think the topic is also attracting a lot of attention. So I'm so glad to see that we can have so many of you here join us for this, lunch. In the States, we usually kind of call this kind of the brown bag, and we did, when I was in New York and DC, we do a lot of that, and I'm hoping we can do more of this so that you can kind of just drop in and hear topics, any topics, and we are always looking for suggestions. But today's topic is particular interest because of the elections, one of the few elections in the world this year, but this particular election in India that just happened earlier, several days, over a long period of time, May and September and June, we're really delighted to have our own scholar in resident, Professor Alejandro Reyes, join us to kind of have this discussion with two really great speakers, Sagina Walyat. She is a lawyer and a policy maker and researcher, founder of the Beacon Rights, and also an Asia Global Fellow. Sagina's bio is really phenomenal. She has a profound commitment in women's rights and also social justice. And she is a fellow at University of Hong Kong and delegate to Australia-India Youth Dialogue, and she's an advocate of feminist diplomacy and artificial intelligence. So we're delighted that she can join us as one of the speakers today. And of course, Debasish Roy Chowdhury is a journalist and researcher and also an author based here in Hong Kong. And he recently co-authored To Kill a Democracy, a book, India's Passage to Despotism. And so Al is holding up the book. And so we're really delighted that he can be talking both English and Chinese. He has lived in and worked in Calcutta, Sao Paulo, Hua Hin, Bangkok, and Beijing, and has reported from Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Nepal, and Qatar. So we're really delighted. He's a Jefferson Fellow and recipient of the multiple media prize, including Hong Kong's very own Society of Publisher in Asia Award. Okay, so with that, I'm going to, and Al is our own, I think we all know Professor Reyes, who is now Senior Fellow at the Center on Contemporary China and the World. And previously, he was at AGI, Asia Global Institute, and a longtime friend. I think Al has been a member for over almost 30 years. So we're delighted that he has agreed to moderate this talk. And we look forward to welcoming you back this summer. We have some great programs, both arts and culture, as well as business and policy. And one of them, I think Al is doing for us in late August. So stay tuned for more programming. And even though I think people may be going away for the summer, we are still going to be very, very busy here at Asia Society with our exhibitions and so on. So I invite you back and encourage you to become a member if you're not, and because it's really hot out there and it's very cold inside. I know people complain about aircon, but last night at one of our programs, there was no complaint because it's really, but it is a great time for us to have these type of discussions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Reyes to get the program started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice, and welcome all of you to this discussion, this lunchtime discussion. I'm very happy to be here with Sagina and Deb. I apologize, concession to the heat. I'm not wearing a jacket. I think I'm the only one with a tie, but I chose the tie very carefully today for the color, so there we go. Yes, thank you. I shouldn't have had to point it out, but there we go. Before we get into the discussion, I'd just like to make 2 points. One, I think that it is interesting that we are going to talk this afternoon about India, the quality of its democracy, the trajectory of its political system, but yet we're focused on, to a large extent, on one man. That kind of is a bit ironic to a large extent, that we're focused so much on this personality. I go back to 2003 when I was in Delhi, and Narendra Modi was still the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and he was invited to speak at the World Economic Forum India Economic Summit. And he was a controversial figure. We forget now to some extent, because in 2002 there were killings in Gujarat state. Muslims, about 1,000 or so, were killed, and he was accused of really letting that happen and doing nothing in response. And so that was 2002, 2003. He was invited by the World Economic Forum to address their India Economic Summit. And I was in the room when he was coming in, and there was such expectation about this figure about to arrive. I'd never seen it before in the many India Economic Summits that I'd attended. You could hear a pin drop, that there was such expectation to see this person in the flesh, because he was somebody of notoriety. Right? When he entered the room, total silence. This didn't even happen when the Prime Minister of India would come, that there would still be kind of chatter, but here, total silence. People so curious about this kind of, some people thinking kind of evil person or whatever. Fast forward 10 years, 2013, and he was actually he was disinvited, I think, by Wharton College in the University of Pennsylvania because of that, his perceived lack of action during that struggle. And he was also, he had visa issues with the United States. To a large extent, he technically couldn't go and visit the United States. Fast forward further from 2013, and he became the leader. He was the leader of India and the leader of the moment, the most sought after kind of leader by the US and the West, particularly in the context of the great power competition between the United States and China. So think about that trajectory, being someone of great notoriety and then becoming this most sought after global leader. You know, whatever you think about the, the howdy Modi, the namaste Trump, and all of that kind of thing that happened over the recent years. And then now we're hitting a different point in his political life, where on his third try, he had won by landslides, 2 landslides, previous elections, but then in this particular most recent election, he lost his majority. There's an arc there that we're beginning to see. So it raises questions about the integrity of India's democracy, the quality of India's democracy, and also about this man, right? But we oddly, while we're talking about India, we're focused very much on this man. The second point that I would make, and I'll make it very quickly, is that India really is today, to a large extent, in this US-China world, in some ways the ultimate hinge country. Folks have heard me talk about, this kind of the hingeability, that the agency that countries have. And India, in some ways, if you arrayed countries across the spectrum from, say, the United States to China on either end, that India, to a large extent, might be right in the middle, where it has its territorial disputes with China, so it might lean nowadays a bit more towards the United States and the West and that kind of Indo-Pacific construct that Japan, Australia, and the United States have moved forward. But it is right there kind of in the middle. And one need only look at the Modi policy on Russia and the issues in with Israel and Hamas to see how how India has been exercising its agency. So from our perspective, sitting here in Hong Kong, in China, we have to understand what this country, very important country, where it's going, what's happening with its domestic politics, and how that domestic politics can affect its foreign policy and its standing in the world. And as I say, as Alice said, I can't think of really two better people to enlighten us on these issues than Deb and Sagina. So I'm going to start with you, Sagina. We've already had a number of weeks. There's a lot of commentary already out there. What are your thoughts now after the consideration of a few weeks about the results of the election? We'll start with that 35,000-foot view, and we'll try to drill in further down. But what are your current thoughts on why the results were the way they are and what it means?
Is it on?
Yes.
Am I audible? Okay. So I have three ways to see these Indian election results. One and foremost is coalition government is back in India, and it is not a new thing for India. So we have coalition government era in India from 1989 to 2013. So and in this era, there are a lot of talks that economic growth will be stalled. Modi will see, tough stance from the opposition and everything. That will happen, and that is the beauty of democracy when you have a good opposition sitting with you. But giving the example of this era, the coalition government era, we see India registered major economic reforms in that particular era, in 1991, 1996, 1997. So it is not something which we, as an Indian, we need to fear about. That, okay, he has lost the majority, and now what will happen with this coalition government? We have a very political history, coalition government history, so we are not thinking that way. As a point of view, BJP worker, definitely they need to think, they need to assess how they can progress more, in which direction, because they have a bigger aspiration. When we compare with the opposition, domestic opposition in India, and this BJP government and NDA government now in power, so their aspirations are very different. One more talks about domestic politics, and one, they have given, especially to the youth, they have given the vision of a global power, that we are now on a journey to be a global power. So with that, I quote you one study that happened in 2023 that is on Indian foreign policy, what the urban youth thinks about it. So there is a data, and that actually will help you understand how the China equation will go with India further. So the 83% of the youth, Indian youth, is in favor of is actually felt that China has mistrusted India over and over again. Historically speaking, India was very keen to have a good friendship with China. Then we had a war in '62. Then there was a territorial, dispute that kept on happening. And this with 2020 Galwan incident that actually, pushed the government also to take a stand against China.
These are the clashes on the border.
Clashes. So, but on the other side, understanding how important our relations are with China, being big power in Asia. So 58% of the youth, Indian youth, thinks that we need to have more economic, stronger ties with China. So now it's on government, and it's on business industry also. So in my recent article, I also mentioned this about this, that the business industry, especially the electronic vehicle industry, they have they have submitted some submissions to Indian government that they want more relaxed policies with China now. But assertiveness can be seen from the point of view of India in an Indian government, especially this Foreign Ministry and the NSA, a National Security Advisor, with the request coming from China that in terms of relaxing visa and everything, they are very assertive. We don't see that is happening very soon. Because of the stand India has taken very strongly that first you need to resolve the border issue, right? And on the contrary, China has a different stand that let's do trade, let's do more economic ties, and then we can settle down. So these, both stances are very different in nature. So that we have to see. And coming back to the domestic thing, and you very rightly said in the beginning that it is unfair to see India by the name of Modi only. See, he is a popular leader, we agree that. But India has seen many popular leaders like Indira Gandhi in the past also, who has shared very personal equations with world leaders back then also. So India has a very rich history in terms of politically also, and while talking about the culture and other aspects of it. So I think it's a very plain statement that media in the West or in the opposition that make that, okay, so this is the decline of Modi. Okay, so it's not like decline. If you see the percentage, in 2019, the voter turnaround was 67%, which is in the history is the biggest turnaround. And this person, in his second term, he got that. He pushed people to come and vote for him, and he came with a majority of 36.56 winning portion. Now coming to this 2024, the difference between 2019 winning portion and 2024 winning percentage is only 1% decline. So yes, I mean, we need to understand that people want change, and that is the basic psychology of Indians. They don't want to see repeated leaders. It is in our psyche that, okay, this guy has done enough work now we need new face. But I would say, I see it as again a big win for Modi, right? That third time he is coming, even though with a lesser mandate, but the portion is 1%. The reduction in 1% only. People want it, and you have to see that it is 28 opposition parties versus this present government in power. Right. So you imagine the pressure India and the Indian people has, as a voter, I can see like it was very challenging for us also to who to vote. Yeah. What is their agenda? Read the manifestos. So yeah, I mean, but it's a very small portion of people who read manifestos, who go by agenda and all that. They go for the party. They go for the candidate. So youth basically go for the candidates, and the elders, they have a very strong support with the parties. Overall, if I sum up this assessment, I would say India, this election result has been very interesting. And as a citizen, we actually celebrate this because everybody is happy. Modi is happy because he is coming for the third time. Right. Voters are happy, they have made some dent. ECI, Election Commission of India, is very happy, nobody is questioning EVM. Opposition is happy because, they got to face save the face. So everybody is happy. In foreign policy also, if we say, the friends are happy because Modi is back. The adversaries are happy because Modi is back with less mandate. So everybody's happy.
So there's it's a kind of a Goldilocks kind of scenario here you're putting. So here, let me follow up a bit before we get to Deb. You focused on the India-China relationship. I had brought it up. On balance, though, I mean, the analysis that you read, quite a bit of the analysis is that, at the end of the day, the electorate spoke because there were many, many people who, despite the progress that India's made domestically, economically, in the world as well in its standing, that there were people still left behind, and that the voters spoke because there were still these voices that had not been heard or felt neglected. On balance, then, do you buy into that narrative that there was these forgotten voters who made their voice known, and that was the kind of result because they had been marginalized or not heard, or they hadn't benefited from the Modi years?
I have 2 points to make here with this term of forgotten voters. One, we have a nota option. Nota as in none of the above. So if you don't want any candidate to see your vote, don't waste your vote, go for nota. right? So in 2019, there was a 4% that India received at national level. This time it was slightly down, the nota. And second thing, the forgotten voices. In this election, very interesting thing happened that minority got, they got collected. It was a consolidated vote that opposition got from the minorities, right? And majority in terms of, when we, actually this is a very perception that has been built that Hindutva or Hindus vote. So this is not like, even Hindus are very, they are in fraction. They are also divided. There are secular Hindus, there are right-winger Hindus, there are Dalits in Hindus, there is a casteism in Hindus, and those people, they actually vote for the other parties also. So it's a very misconception that has been built that only Hindus vote, and every Hindu is a right-winger, and they vote for BJP. Even the minorities also vote for BJPs. So it's all about the reform in what area they have done. And especially with the, since I work on women rights, so in this election, we saw a huge spike in women voters because of the, the schemes, centrist schemes this government has launched. So women got benefited a lot with that, and the vote bank goes to them. So when we say women, it comes from all strata, it comes from all religion.
And do we know how women voted in the election?
No, actually, it's, your concern is very genuine. But if I see back 10 years back, then that was a concern. And it has nothing to do with Modi, right? It's just about women are getting educated. They are now, exercising their own right to make a choice, to vote. So it's not that it's, advised vote or something. There might be a portion of that. We don't have data on that. So far, we don't have. But yes, altogether, women vote goes
they voted in greater numbers.
Yes, and that vote went for BJP mostly.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Deb, you've written already quite extensively on the election since, focusing quite a bit on the implications for democracy and the lessons one can draw about the quality of a democracy. And I'm wondering, with the added benefit of some extra time since some of the things that you've written, which I recommend to the audience, what are your thoughts then on the impact of the elections?
On the impact of
Well,
elections.
on the elections themselves, and where you see India going as a result of what we've seen.
First, tell me how to switch this on.
Oh, if you just have it up, it'll come on. It might take a bit.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's good.
All right. Okay, so first, the election results. I would like to point out a caveat that what has happened in India is, after this election, and I have seen this in international media a lot, headlines like democracy has won, and Indian system has shown how resilient it is, the vibrancy of democracy, and all of that, which goes completely against what they have been reporting for the last 10 years. So you can't have it both ways. Either India's democracy is not working or it's working, right? But so one dangerous thing about this election result is that it has put a gloss on the despotism that is happening in India over the last 10 years. So suddenly, because Modi has lost his majority, there is a sense that democracy has won, that people have spoken and they have been heard. But it also has to be seen in the context, the election has to be seen in the context of the huge amount of money that the ruling party had access to, or the huge or the unprecedented capture of institutions that has happened in India in the last 10 years, including the Election Commission, which is one of the government agencies, the emasculation of the media, which has become an extension of the government now, and the use of government agencies against opposition parties. I mean, like in this election, we saw in 2 states, we had elections where the chief minister of the state, the chief minister is like the governor in the US, or these 2 chief ministers were in jail when the elections took place, and or they're in jail on unproven charges. So this is like a bit like the sham election that you see in Bangladesh, where you have elections and you have the opposition leaders in jail. So you have to see the elections in the context of all of this. And when you see the election in the context of all of this, you will realize that this was not a regular election. This was a despotic election. And what do I mean by despotic election? What is despotism? If I can just briefly introduce the concept of despotism. Despotism, or the new despotism, is very different from the last century's despotism. So you don't have dictators anymore. What you have is people who come to power and they do not dismantle democracy. They maintain the facade of democracy. They keep all the institutions in place, but they capture the institutions, they hollow them out, and they make them work for them. And this is what has happened in India. And these institutions have been captured. There has been, but of course, India is a very diverse and a very large country. It's not Hungary, so one person or one party can never capture the whole of India. It's unthinkable. So what despotic politics does is, it does not eliminate the chance of electoral upsets, right? In despotic politics, you do not eliminate, or that happens in dictatorships, that you will always get 99% of the vote, you will never lose. That is not how despotism works. Despotic politics, it minimizes the chance of an electoral upset. It does not eliminate it. It cannot eliminate it, especially in a country as vast as India and diverse. So here too, the chances were minimized, and Modi got 240 seats. As she rightly pointed out, if you drill down the numbers, it's actually not even 1%, it's 0.7%. 0.7%, yes. So the vote swing is just 0.7%. And it is, so you have a situation where you have 0.7%, the votes go down, but your seats go down like 63 seats. That is because of the first past the post system that we have, that sometimes even like slight swings can be amplified in the number of seats. So if you ask me, I would say that I would take this result with a pinch of salt. There is a caveat. This is not a complete verdict, because had this been a fair and square election, the result would have been even worse, much worse than this. So don't be misled by this result, A. And what happens now, I also see a lot of writing on how Modi will be humbled and how he's chastened and how the opposition will force him to behave. His alliance partners now have upper hand. Don't believe in any of that, right? Modi is a very different kind of person. A, Modi's party still has 240 seats, right? That is, so Modi's party has a shortfall of only 30 seats, because the total number of directly elected seats is 543. Your halfway mark would be 272. So his party has a shortfall of 30 seats. Now compare that with the shortfall that his predecessor had. Can you imagine that? It was 230 seats. So Congress, when it formed government before Modi, it was 230 seats short, right? So even with that, the Congress, as she said, they did a lot of reforms, their economic reforms, and a lot of major policy changes happened despite that. Modi, in contrast, only has a shortfall of 30 seats. And the kind of man that he is, he will make up for this in 6 months. His party will regroup. or they will have defections from other parties. Other parties will, other people will come and join, or he will be back to majority in no time. I can assure you. And also bear in mind that most people do not get this. Modi is not your usual kind of politician. Modi is not there for the next election to win the next election. So this party, this man and this party has a very different vision of, it actually has a vision of India. It wants to recast the Indian state in a particular manner. So winning the election is only, so power is not an end in itself. Power has a goal, which is to change the nature of the Indian state, right? And just a shortfall of 30 seats and 0.7% drop in votes will not change that. So much of the things that has been happening will continue to happen. Just let me tell you, just in the last 2-3 weeks, if you look at the news in India carefully, you will see there have been half a dozen cases of lynchings of Muslims. That hasn't stopped. There is a water scarcity in Delhi. BJP leaders are claiming that the Muslims are taking all the water. So all the anti-Muslim messaging hasn't stopped, right? As people have been saying that things will be different now. Nothing has changed. New laws are being brought in to monitor online journalism. Foreign journalists have been sent home. So many of the things that have been happening over the last 10 years are still happening, and they will continue to happen. So what will happen now is that you cannot go back to claim, and like this is very dangerous. You cannot, when this happened, you cannot say that India's democracy is not working, because you have already concluded that India's democracy is doing fine because Modi has lost majority.
Some years ago, when I was an undergraduate in university, my thesis at the time was on the concept of constitutional authoritarianism, which, and I looked at the Philippines that I grew up in, and also at Singapore. And I'm very interested by what you were talking about, that one of the more dangerous systems of government that we could have is an essentially democratic constitutional system, but that is being subverted within the parameters of that constitutional system. And you can have authoritarianism within a constitutional system, and that's in some ways the more insidious of the kinds of subversions of democracy, and how you deal with it can be very difficult. Deb, can we talk a bit about the opposition then? Should we look at the election as having been a victory of some kind for the opposition, or the opposition continued to be very weak in the context that you're talking about? In terms, what is it? What were the guardrails really at this point? I mean, if there are any guardrails, and the narrative that you're proposing is that Modi has not actually been really restrained in doing what he was doing in terms of undermining Indian democracy. So are there no guardrails that now exist as a result? Or is the opposition there, or is the opposition too weak? What are we to conclude then going forward? Particularly when, I'm thinking of it in some ways in the context of the United States, which has, of course, its own big election in November. And we all think that depending on your perspective, we think, oh, there are still guardrails in case a certain former president returns. So how do you see it in India?
So what the result has done is that it has energized the opposition, yes. It has energized the opposition within the party itself, because BJP, surprisingly, BJP is one of the few parties in India which are actually democratic. because in India, most parties are mom and pop shops, right? Or the leadership is hereditary. There is a small clique of people at the top who control the party. So, or the only two exceptions are, interestingly, the left and the right. So the Communist parties on the one hand and the right wing, the BJP party, they have some sort of, though no political party in India conducts election. This is a very strange contradiction, right? This is the largest, this country conducts the largest election in the world, but no political party in India has internal elections. But there is a semblance of democracy has always been a semblance of democracy, both in the communist parties and in the right-wing BJP. But what has happened under Modi is that has gone, that went. It became like any other party, like a one-man show, two-man show, he and his sidekick. I should not call him I just realized this will be on YouTube, so. So he and his long-time aide, who is now the Home Minister, so it's basically these two men who have been dictating and there is a reason for that. The party has realized that what they want to achieve, they have the best chance of achieving it through this man, right? Because in the last election, after one of the exit polls, it was conducted by the CSDS, which is one of the institutions in India which conducts these polls. They asked voters, why did you vote for BJP? And 1/3 of the voters in the last election, they said they voted because of Modi, right? So had Modi not been the candidate, they might or might not have voted for the BJP. So there is a reason why the party has allowed Modi the leeway that he has got. Now that his sheen of invincibility has kind of frayed a bit, now the opposition within the party has also been energized. So people who have not been speaking out within the party, they will feel less restrained to speak out. So it is not just the opposition, but it's also the opposition within the party. But if you ask me if the opposition is weak or not, the opposition is not any weaker or stronger than they were 6 months ago, right? The problems of the Congress party have not gone away. So the problems are still there, organizational weakness and all of that. Their regional parties, they have their strong points, they have their weak points. So nothing has changed. And also remember that this result, Modi delivered this result after 10 years of incumbency, right? So you have been in power for 10 years. And so obviously people will hold you responsible for things that have gone wrong. So you have to, so there is that anti-incumbency factor which comes into play when you have been in power for 10 years. So despite that, there has only been a 0.7% drop in overall vote share. So, but in the Hindi-speaking northern belt where the BJP, we thought that the BJP has a complete lock on the region, in that area, the opposition is far more energized than before because this is where the vote share has really dropped.
Right.
So it has made up in vote share in other parts of India, but in these areas where the BJP, which was considered a BJP fortress, there are cracks in that fort, and so the opposition is much more energized than before.
Interesting. Now, I will get to the audience, so if you have any questions, please get ready, and there are microphones there. If I could just ask the two of you one question before we go to the audience. Again, and maybe it's wrong, but I go to the United States and I think about, I hear so often that if the former president loses, it's not the end of Trumpism. In other words, Trumpism would survive even if Donald Trump is not on the scene. Do you think that there's a kind of modism that, I mean, he's 73 years old, Narendra Modi is, and so, you know, if his term is now, what, 5 years? So that would bring him to being 78, and as you say, it's not likely he'll run again. There is the Home Minister, Amit Shah, who's talked about as a potential successor. And yet,
Well, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. There are other
there are
claimants.
others. But in any case, is there a kind of modism that's been unleashed in India that is a strong movement that you see continuing, whether positive or negative in its impact going forward? If I can ask you, Sagina.
Before answering this, I would like to add another factor what Deb was saying. There is another reason why BJP lost its 4th share, that is a rift between RSS and BJP.
Right.
So within party, within their political and this structure. So RSS
That's
is
extreme right, kind of.
not extreme right. That's a nationalist party,
Nationalist. Right.
which is we can say roughly a parent body of BJP. Right. So they do a lot of footwork in terms of door-to-door campaign, and India as is a very emotional quotient is very high in India in terms of voters. So they consider these factors. Who is approaching us? Especially, I am talking about the rural belt, which is huge, right? So they consider this fact very carefully. And here within party, this RSS and BJP rift, RSS didn't do any, they didn't participated much in this. So that backfired BJP. Second point, that the incumbency, many big faces, big leaders from opposition party, they were joining BJP. So people got confused, because that person has a face, right? But now the party has been changed. So the choice of candidate by the BJP also went wrong.
Right.
So that actually is a contributing factor to that heart,
Right.
the BJP heart, where BJP lost. So coming back to this Modism, I think this party structure, what it tells, from their past experiences, they sit, they advise whosoever comes, but they don't participate much once they retire themselves. So Amit Shah is not the choice for party. What we believe in India, right, as per our analysis. There are many good names like Nitin Gadkari, who has done tremendous work in infrastructure in India. And he is also close to RSS. So the chances are he may take over. But and that person will come with his own ideology, not going to extend the ideology somebody else has set.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we need to make a distinction between Modism and Trumpism.
Right.
Modi is backed by a 100-year-old organization. And outside India, or even in India, sometimes we superficially look at Modi, as you were saying, that why is it only Modi or that we look at? That's because an abstract concept is easier to understand when you put a face to it. So Modi is a face to the concept of Hindu supremacism, right? That Hindus have the first right, or the topmost rights in this ancient land of Hindus. That is the idea. Modi is only the representative of that idea. So this RSS that she mentioned, it's a huge organization. It calls itself a cultural organization. It has thousands of other organizations allied with this main idea of Hindu nationalism, or what I call Hindu supremacism. And Trump does not have this kind of an organizational backing, right? Trump is a man who has become the face of white nationalism in the US. But this white nationalist movement is not an organized movement the way RSS, the Hindu nationalist movement is. So RSS people from RSS who have been trained by RSS, they have infiltrated every organization, the high offices, every institution, the academia, bureaucracy, military. So there is an organized campaign to spread itself within the system, which you don't see in the US. US is more sporadic. It's more dependent on one person, right? So Trump will come, Trump will go probably, but there is a continuity in the Hindutva. What we call Hindutva is the politics of Hindu nationalism. There is a continuity of strategy in Hindutva, which you don't have in the US. So that way, I think you need to make a distinction between Trump and Modi.
Very interesting. All right. I know you caught my eye initially. Please, can you introduce yourselves and then and where you're from? Thank you very much. There's a microphone over there. Yeah, thank you.
So my name is Namisha, and here I have few comments about first you mentioning about Modi accused of killing or whatever, but please add also that he got clean chit from the Supreme Court of India recently. So that
I
is
didn't say
mandatory.
accused of killing. I said that he was accused of not doing anything.
Okay, so but whatever.
But that was
Somehow that was the impression created
Right.
all around the world. So that need to be rectified and added. This concept that Supreme Court is still exists in India and it can give some.
And that happened, I think, in
Just few
2012.
years. Yeah,
in
just few
2012.
years.
He was not given a clean sheet. He was, it was the court concluded that there is not enough evidence to pin it on him.
In any case,
That exactly.
No, that
You
is
can
in any
change.
case,
No,
this
it's
is
up
not
to you, right?
This is not something I want to
Okay.
litigate at this
Yeah,
point.
that's
So,
okay,
so
okay.
to your question.
That is not
But again, even this point should be added.
Right.
So
No,
that's
no,
what-
I
yeah.
understand that.
And also, thank you for your discussion, and it's really insightful. But I have just two comments to make here. Like I can see your book, To Kill a Democracy or something. So my bad, I haven't read this, but definitely I would like you to shed some light on how Mrs. Indira Gandhi declared emergency, and that could be something of your interest to write. And also you said Muslims victim card and Muslims are being mobbed and lynched by mob. But how about Nupur Sharma case? It was under the Modi government, so-called Hindutva government. And also Kanhaiya Lal case, which was beheaded by Muslim mob, I don't know for what reason, right? So don't make it as a selling point or just making a victim card. It's something which is, see, if different community live together, they can have the conflict. But making it as a issue and publicized and those kind of thing, it would have never happened because 10 years Modi government, so-called Hindutva government, all these could not happen, and the population of Muslims in India have
Yes,
ever increased.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Would you like to...
May I know you're affiliated with what?
So I have done my PhD from Hong Kong University, and I'm together with colleagues from Hong Kong University. Yes.
And you are teaching there now?
So, no, I run my own social enterprise in Hong Kong.
Okay, what do you work with?
So I work on mental health of people, and I'm
Okay.
a mental health educator basically.
All right, okay. Thank you. Okay, so a couple of things. If you read my book, if you
Sure.
ever read my book somehow got painted as an anti-Modi book, but this is about 75 years of decline of India's democracy. Actually, I first thought about the book when Congress was in power, that this is not how democracy ought to be working. But then, and then I forgot about the idea. I went back to my work, but then things again when Modi came, I thought I will revive the idea. But so it's not just about Modi.
What Mrs. Indira Gandhi did.
It has all of that. It has all of that.
Okay, so
It has all of that. Yeah,
because
yeah.
I did not read your book.
It has all of that. So it is like 75 years. Actually, the back cover says that it's not, it has become fashionable to blame India's decline of democracy all on one person, but it has been happening for 75 years. So the book is explains to you how this process has been going on for 75 years. That's one thing. The other thing is that, so you're obviously a very, what we call in India, Modi Bhakt, because,
You can very well say that.
yes, yes, I can see that you're Bhakt is a devotee, not just a supporter. So,
I'm happy to do that.
yes, yes. So she's happy. So, you know, like, so Muslims are not really being lynched. Power is not really being misused. The television anchors are not really taking one side. India is doing very well. India is becoming a global power. So this is all in the Bhakt universe. All of this is happening. So I can understand where you come from.
And I can very well understand from where you are.
No, you cannot, because you haven't even read my book.
But I
So you have no idea what you're talking about, but I know what you're talking about from what you said. So what was your specific question exactly?
No, I had just that comment because making it a conflict among the community,
So there is no conflict
of
among...
course there is, and which country don't have any conflict among
Also, do you remember like 10 years ago were Muslims being lynched in India regularly?
So, see, you are pinpointing, so what you
Of course I will pinpoint, because it is being conducted by the government.
I
It's
think,
backed by the government. Of course I will pinpoint.
A conversation between two people, probably, maybe we leave that for
Yeah,
a
that's
separate,
better because,
yeah, we should probably leave that for after the event. So thank you very much. The gentleman at the back, and then the gentleman here. So right at the back there, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Damien Horth. Thank you for the spirited conversation. I've enjoyed it. We haven't talked much about India's success over the course of the last decade, maybe 2.5 decades, and I suppose the potential for continued success, economic growth, economic development, which should benefit the entire society. I suppose my concern from this conversation is, would the government be willing to risk that in the context of their other areas of focus? I don't get, correct me if I'm wrong, an impression that they have been willing to risk that yet. But could arrogance or something else change that over the course of the next 5 years?
Either of you.
Do you
or
want to
both
go
of you.
first?
Yeah. Sagina, would you like to?
Okay, so I guess you're talking about the social unrest part of it, like the anti-Muslim mess.
Unrest, also undermining institutions, ultimately undermining the institutions effectively would, I suppose it's an opinion that could undermine economic growth medium.
In other words, they could spoil the success, I guess.
Yeah, so the thing is that there is, and this is mentioned in my book as well, that there is a popular view in India, which is slightly odd, because Indians are by nature politically very democratic. But also in India, there is a view that we have not done as well as China because democracy is a hindrance, right? So there is an appreciation also for a strong man like Modi. This is one of the reasons why he draws so much support, that people like to think that if you actually didn't have these institutions, maybe we would have done better. Because look at China, we started from the same place, and look at where China is today, and look at us. So maybe democracy is not such a great idea, right? So there is some kind of popular support for populists, you could say. So if you, and that thought is also shared by the regime, by the people who are in power now. In fact, there have been instances of ministers, Modi's ministers having said this publicly, that there is too much democracy in India. So, so the institutions that you think are beneficial are actually considered to be obstacles. So if somebody had the freedom and the free hand to facilitate policy, then maybe India would have done better. That is the view of an important section of the government, and even among the population, a lot of people think like that. So curbing institutions is not a risk for them, because they see it as an important part of getting things done, because institutions are a hindrance, are an obstacle. So they're not mutually conflicting.
It kind of echoes of what the Trump 2.0 Project 2025 folks are saying, that the institutions in the United States are the problem, and that they're, on day one they're going to come in and deal with the civil service and things like that. Interesting. Sagina?
Yeah, I agree with his first point, that this is the motion that is being set in India, that this is somewhere becoming a hindrance to the growth. And I will cite it with the example of farmer protest that happened. That was a 1-year-long farmer protest that happened in India. And it was a peaceful protest. From the point of view of government, the government initially, they ignored people, right, which gave a good air. They gathered a good support from all across Punjab, the state I come from. So I have a real hand experience how it went really bad. And when people got actually absolute power in their hands, they can also destroy. So the state of my state, Punjab, is it's not good in terms of rule of law and order. It's not good, right? I come as a minority in that state. So it's a kind of threat that is looming over our head all the time now, after that farmer protest, that how government not really handled well. And I will also, again join with this election result. So there were two separatists, the Khalistani separatists. They were the candidate in the election, and they won with a really good margin. Now see the mindset, we are talking about the minority, we are talking about the conflicts. So actually Nimisha is right. It's not that this is something new. And I'm not saying that this government cannot stop, or the previous government could not stop. Government should have means. Because they have the power. So this has been a case study of India, that there has been a conflict because we are highly diverse society. We are 2,000 plus ethnic groups. So there is a conflict which is bound to happen. But the accountability comes with the government, whosoever is in power. So that's about it.
Yes, but the difference is that whoever is in government tries to manage that conflict. The unique thing about this government is that it like kind of thrives on that conflict.
No, I do.
It aggravates that conflict because it is trying to rally together the Hindu majority vote, and it is trying to find the Muslims as the big villains in this country, and the people who are holding back India's growth. So that is the difference, right?
Yeah, that
so
is.
all the other governments that we have had so far, they have tried to, because India is a very complex place, as you said, it's a very diverse country, and you have to navigate these complex relationships between religions, between castes, between linguistic groups. So for the first time, we are seeing that there is a government in place which, rather than manage this diversity, is trying to aggravate the differences. And I will come to your point. Actually, a bigger risk is not the risk of institutional destruction and capture. It is the risk of social unrest. Because nowhere in the world, nowhere in history, at no point have you had a country, instance of a country being both an economic powerhouse and a conflict zone. But the way it is going, India can soon become, if mass violence becomes rampant. Like, I don't know if you have heard of the state called Manipur in northeast India. So there is a civil war raging in Manipur for 1 year now. And it's largely between the Hindu who live on the plains and the Christian tribals group who live on the hills. And this is being fanned by the BJP government in Manipur. So if that is replicated all over India, and Muslims are right now, they're very nervous about their status in the country. And also this has never been the case before. Of course, as a minority, they have always felt marginalized. There are reasons to why they might have felt marginalized. But the equal citizenship of Hindus, Muslims, and everybody else was never in question. But that is now in question. And if 200 million people lose trust in the system, it can manifest itself in very violent ways. So I think the bigger risk in India is the risk of social unrest rather than institutional destruction.
Sagina, you... So sorry, do you mind if I just go, because I just want Sagina, I know you were in the midst of saying something.
I just wanted to disagree with the one that we cannot deny that this was not happening in the past. It is happening from the beginning, since independence when India got in 1947. So it has been happening. Maybe there was no media with that kind of potential.
There was lynching for the last 50
Yes, of course.
years. Lynching.
Of course.
Lynching.
In UP, in Punjab, there was. It is not something very new to India.
Lynchings have always been like happening.
Do you think lynching is happening just in the Modi governance
Yes.
only? No, it has been a part. It has been.
I'm now going to go back to. I'm now going to go back to the questioner.
No, that's the fact actually.
No,
yeah.
I agree. But I think that
And
we
I'm
should
not
go back
giving
to the comment
free
from the
pass
questioner.
to any government. I am not representing any government. I am speaking as an Indian here. That is the fact. That was the fact.
But you said you're proud to be a Bhat.
But you have no right to.
Also, I read you right? You said you're happy to be a Bhat.
Sorry. An argument. We shouldn't have an argument at this point. So please, no. Everybody, stop.
Okay.
And we'll go just to a very brief comment.
Very quick
questioner.
question,
Right?
because
Yes, thank
you described very eloquently that the BJP and the RSS have a vision for India, right?
Yes.
Which I'll let you define that. I think I know what you mean. But will they risk economic development for that vision, was the point of my question.
Well, so far they seem to think that they can have it both ways. Now, whether they will risk, I think if you go by the RSS ideology, they would prioritize their vision over any possible risk to the economy. I don't think they. I think, like, for them, it's a no-brainer. Whether to have a Hindu first state or a great economy, I think it's a no-brainer to them because they don't think these to be in conflict with each other. They believe that you can be a Hindu first state, nation, and a great economy at the same time. There is no conflict in their mind about this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sagina, I think
my quick take is how I see. I think with this mandate, what Modi has received in this election, he doesn't have any choice rather than just growing, pushing more reforms, pushing more economy, because that's the last choice he has now to come back again, not Modi, the other person, BJP of course, in 2029. So they are not left with any choice. So they have to work. And they will, there will be accountability plus reforms plus the economic growth.
I apologize for having to calm the situation, but I do think that it's better if we stay a little bit, more general at this point in terms of getting questions in, and we can have the side conversations afterwards. Pietro, could you just introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
So I'm Pietro Rossano. I teach at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok, Thailand. So I have two questions. So first I go with a soft question because I see the conversation was a little bit heated. So this kind of like soft question is, given like the diversity of India, what could be learned from cases like Singapore or Malaysia that are also like multiracial society, if it could be brought in India? And actually, would this government want to do this kind of experimentation? And my second question is a bit more provocative. So I think we are talking about
Just what we
democracy
need. Sorry.
as from a Western perspective, right? So we say democracy, which includes also like habeas corpus, rule of law, and so on, right? But there are also, let's say, other concepts of democracy. For example, like mainland China government claims also to be a democracy, a democratic government. So my question is India going to be more of a Chinese version of democracy, and whether this would actually be good for the economic growth of India?
Fantastic. Deb, if you want to start.
So two things is one is that Malaysia is not a great example because Malaysia is basically a Muslim first state. Yes. So it is basically a Muslim first state and yeah. So yeah. So this was not the foundational belief of India. So when India set out as a republic in 47, in 51 we adopted our constitution, we thought of ourselves as a multi-ethnic country where everybody will have the same right? But in Malaysia it works differently. So I won't want India to become a Hindu Malaysia, because that is not how our constitution was framed. Our constitution was an inclusive constitution where people have equal rights to power. And so that's one thing. And the second is whether India will become China. I think it is impossible. India is very diverse, and it's like linguistically diverse, culturally diverse. It is not just religion. Even in Hindus, like I am a Hindu, I assume she is a Hindu, but we may believe in different gods. Or for some Hindus are vegetarian, some Hindus are not. Or for some Hindus like me, religious event is incomplete without meat. For some Hindus, it's unthinkable to eat meat during a religious event. So, it's a very complex country. And I say that in a country like India, democracy is our default setting. You cannot have any other form of government apart from democracy, because how else will you give everybody a stake in power if you do not have democracy? So I think India cannot become China. And China has a history of, if you look at China, it has a history of unitary empires, like an empire which controlled all of India. In India, that has not happened very often in history. Even the British, when they ruled, there were like thousands of princely states. Even the British did not have all of India in its control. So India has never been under one rule, one central authority. Yeah. So India is not going to become China. It's not possible.
One might say that China itself is also a very diverse country. But Sagina, please.
Yeah. I think he summed it really well. I echo his thoughts that it's very difficult. It's by default in us that we will not accept any other kind of governance. And speaking about China, their democracy is, the terminology they use is dictatorship democracy. So it's a completely different kind of democracy they are talking about, which we never hear, or maybe India can never adapt that. Yeah, I mean, no chance of that. People will not accept, and the results are also here. Now we have a better opposition in parliament. After 10 years, now we have an opposition leader in parliament will be sitting. So it will be a strong boost for democracy. Right. So there will be, and coming back to that economic reforms. So there's one, the correlation I'm drawing with the past happened in coalition government. So there's one beauty about Indian democracy is no matter who's in power and opposition, when it comes to the common good about India or the foreign policy basically, so everybody's on same page. So these kind of reforms will keep on happening. Yeah.
On foreign policy, I would like to echo her that there is a continuity in India. So it does not change with the Prime Minister. There is a continuity, and I think that is going to remain unchanged, or no matter who is in power.
For the moment, I was looking at these dolls on the shelf there, and I thought one of them was Trump. One is clearly Hillary Clinton, but I think the other one is Bill Clinton, not. Oh, is that Trump? Oh, right. It looks a little bit from my distance. So he is kind of here in some way. That's kind of disconcerting. But anyway, any questions? Other questions? Please. Yes, who has that hand up? Yes, please. There's a microphone over there. I think right next to you, actually. So. Just give it a time, and then it will. Oh. There's a microphone, I think, right next to you. Oh, there we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Zamani, and I'm originally from Afghanistan. And I'm very happy to be here today. And thanks for the sharing. You know that Afghanistan has a very strategic location. We are bordering with India, Pakistan, and Iran. And of course, it's apparent that India and the US are allies. But I'm just wondering, like, what is going to be Modi's position on the geopolitics of the region, and also like the Taliban in power? Because of course, Afghanistan is not the center of attention of the international community right now. But I'm just like wondering, like, with the Taliban in power and like no women's rights, so like how India is going to influence in a positive or negative way.
Right.
Yeah.
Sagina, I think, please.
So first, thank you for the question. And first and the foremost thing, India and US are not allies; they are partners. So they are very careful about this terminology. And because India it's not like they are in the middle. India has its own stance. They are independent and very categorically with assertive foreign policy that we are seeing in the last 10 years. They now, the government itself, term it as a nationalist foreign policy, that India first foreign policy. So they are not aligning with anyone, they are just aligning with their own national interest. So whichever way it goes. So on some issues they are, agreeing with China, on some issues they are with US, on some issues they are with Russia. So it's very clear stance India has adopted, with a reference of non-alignment movement that we have seen in the history as well. Regarding Afghanistan, see, there is a lot of change that is happening on that ground. In fact, India, after when Taliban took over, India shut down, stopped funding the Afghan embassy also. So it was a kind of indirect way to say that we accept Taliban. That's what I read. Because once you stop that embassy to work, then only the other power will come and join us. And I believe, if I'm correct, that Taliban now has sent their diplomats or ambassadors they have started sending to China as well, I believe, to UAE as well. So, and which makes India a little nervous now. And under that nervousness, India will expand on, having tying relation with Taliban government. Yeah.
It's interesting because, if you spend any time in the bureaucracy, I appreciate your point that the term allies and partners bureaucrats are very careful about using one or the other because there are actual significant differences between the two. Deb, do you have any thoughts on that?
So is this working now?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, it is kind of complicated. I think with the Taliban, the Modi government has, even if it is not front of his diplomatic relationship, it has backroom channels with the Taliban government. Because India has to live with it, right? Whoever is in power in Afghanistan, whoever is in power in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, in Nepal, India cannot influence any of that. So whoever is in power, India will have to do business with them. And India has a substantial goodwill in Afghanistan, I believe, for historical reasons, culturally. And that is not going to change. So India is going to do business with the Taliban officially or unofficially, openly or through back channels.
Further questions? Yes, please. Professor Chan, Ying Chan. Yes.
My question is along the similar line, but it's on China. Sagina, you wrote yesterday in the South China Morning Post,
Yes.
right, on the geopolitics of fallout of the Indian election. And you talk about the deepening relationship between India and the Biden administration. Now, with Donald Trump and Joe Biden running neck to neck, so what would be what would be the impact of maybe Donald Trump wins, which is not unlikely. So what does it mean in terms of India and China relationships in this grand geopolitics of things and in the context of the US election? So maybe both of you can comment.
He's going to listen to our response. Yes.
You want to go first?
Again.
Okay, so that's actually a very interesting question, and this is something, in terms of what people think, so they are more towards the side of Trump. What government thinks, they are just trying to maintain the balance in a way that if Trump comes, there will be, because he has made a statement, very strong statements about the sanctioning, and they will not spare even India also. So that's a tricky thing for India as well if Trump comes up, because India will not stop its business with Russia or, with these powers. But with the coming times, I'll take it a little bit further, how the Tibet movement is, now they are trying to resurface with the US. So I see it as in future we will see more partnership with US, India-US, to counterbalance China on the border, because India has own invested interest because of the border issue and the Indian Ocean. And regarding, and I clearly see the Tibet issue being resurfaced. One of the reason is diverting China's attention from Taiwan. So that's very interesting to see, because India is also now, India has that kind of intention to grow relation with Taiwan as well. So they are playing together, but as separate games. So India is very particular about this thing. Wherever they can easily deny. Okay, so like they wanted to expand on the domain of Quad. So, but India is not agreeing on that. They don't want to include that security. So India is playing its own game with, with a ground of match with other allies or the other partners.
So as for like we were talking about the continuity in India's foreign policy, I think even in the US, there is like a bipartisan agreement on the long-term relationship with India. So that won't change whether Biden wins or Trump wins, because all parties there agree that the relationship, with a stronger relationship with India, is the future of our foreign policy. So on both sides, in India too, there is an understanding that the relationship with the West, the US, has to be stronger, and this is becoming more so as the difference between India's power and China's power becomes bigger. So, although more assertive and powerful China becomes, or the more the Indian establishment likes to think that it has to club with other powers in order to protect its interests. And that is not going to change in the medium term.
One of the interesting things, by the way, that I may escape people's notice is that India has been participating in naval maneuvers in the Pacific Ocean, not just in the Indian Ocean. And also, India has recently supplied missiles to the Philippines, which I find fascinating, as particularly when you think about the Philippines as being kind of right now on the front line in terms of the dispute with China over the maritime dispute in South China Sea. KC Kwok, please.
Thank you. I'm from the University of Hong Kong. Talking about the relationship between India and China, and going back to Sagina's earlier comment that I think you mentioned 50% of the youth in India thinks that India should develop more and closer economic relations with China. And there was a time when India say no to a lot of Chinese investments and services, digital services companies and so on. It was a very bad relationship at that point in time, of course. But looking ahead and bearing in mind the geopolitical situation, the nationalistic interests of India's foreign policy and so on, how do you think the economic relationship between China and India would evolve, over the medium term? That's one side of it. The other issue is talking about Modi's reform, stepping up, the need to step up reform and continue to push up for economic development. I do not know enough about the details of India's economic development. But what I have is a very broad concept that when China was at India's stage of development, rapid economic growth in China meant 12% growth, 15% growth. So something is holding India back. What are those obstacles that India wants to unblock to allow the country to grow even further?
Big question. So Sagina, if I might, right?
Actually, that's a very good question and big question. Just recall me if I miss something to answer. So I'll start from the history. History as in India and China, they started all together, right? India missed the train. And the leaders of India at that time, they wanted to have a really great relation with China for a reason that, the potential and the civilizational impact that we had or we shared with each other. And for one more reason, it was the Pakistan. Because very clear it was from the beginning that we will not be able to establish good relation with Pakistan in future as well. So these things were playing, and then somewhere in a decade or so, we were having good relation with China. There was a slogan that was carved, Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, that Chinese are Indians are brothers. So it has enjoyed a good period as well. But what impacted, and India, if I talk about government Calais, in the government streets, government wants to have a really good relation with China. But the only stuck is that border conflict. So India first stance is to resolve that, and China is completely opposite. We have a trade deficit with China, huge trade deficit, and China is our, a top business partner. So having a good relation with China is of course in both favor, and having a bad relation with, it's not working for anybody. For example, recently, only 2 days back, China requested for the direct flights, which we used to have before COVID. Now it's been 4 years. We have not resumed that. India has not resumed that. So which is against, impacting China as well in terms of tourism, because India is a huge population, and it's a good for Indian population if they go to China. Plus, in terms of technology and manufacturing, Indian people do look up to China. They want to adapt. They want to have collaborations with them. Now, there are two sections. One is utmost nationalist section in India, that they don't want to have any kind of relation with China in terms of economic. But there are practical and, the progressive section, huge progressive section, and plus with the industry section also. They are pushing government now to get some relaxation in the visa policies, skilled visa relaxation for Chinese worker, or to open up the access. The thing you mentioned that India adapted, the government adapted, that we will restrict trade with China, that happened. Actually, that happened with a government notification that there will be a strong scrutiny, because there were evidences, placed before the COVID that China is now trying to interfere in Indian internal matters. So that was a kind of, a measure India took that time. But now the growth rate you mentioned, that is again very true. And India needs to do lot more in terms of manufacturing sector. We have a Make in India initiative, but that initiative needs to have a good boost. Our raw material that comes from China, no matter what kind of relation we are sharing with each other, but we are codependent, right? So for a growth point of view and from a strategic point of view also, being a good, big powers in Asia, we should have a great relation with each other to develop more speedily.
And often when they talk about manufacturing in India, they focus on the lack of the infrastructure deficit, which actually India has tried in recent years
they are
to
developing.
to address
This
that,
is the
right?
vision they have developed few years back, right? So it will take time, but they are doing well. Yeah.
Deb?
So a few points about India-China relationship. One is, despite all of this tension and all, actually the Chinese trade with India has gone up 30% or something in the last 1 year. I think China is back to India's #1 trading partner now. Yeah. So, we have these political tensions, border issues, but actually the economic relationship continues to be very healthy, which is not often reported, but the fact is that we do business with each other a lot. That's one thing. Now, this thing that you mentioned, that what is holding India back, that is very interesting, because the point where India is today, where China was, and it developed, it delivered double-digit growth for 3 decades. That's how China became what China has today. India is not getting that. India is already struggling with 6%, 7%. And it has only been a couple of decades, right? So I think one thing that we have to understand is, and it's not just China, across Asia, all the Asian tigers that we talk about, the miracles, the Asian miracles, and this is common, that when they decided to industrialize their country, it was not just industry, it was not just manufacturing that they focused on. Or they looked at different other things, or they looked at infrastructure. They spent huge on physical infrastructure. They spent huge amounts of money on social infrastructure, education, healthcare, social support, land reforms, which was if you look at all the countries like Malaysia, China, all of them, land reforms was an important part of development. Because this is how you create internal market, right? You reduce political risk, you create internal market. So one thing that has not happened in India is we have not seen that synchronization of economic development and social development. So the kind of initiative we need or to reform the society, the kind of investments we need to strengthen our public healthcare system, public education, that has not happened. And I think that is one of the things that is holding us back. We have all these young people, but they do not have the education and the skill set that you need or to boost manufacturing. So we have this demographic advantage, but we are not using it properly.
Right.
So that is a big difference.
And if I might, just before we close, I think one of the issues is the states also, integrating, harmonizing the rules across the states. I think there have been efforts to address that, but it still exists. Right? All right. Thanks so much. We're a bit just slightly over time. Apologize for that. But as you know, as you can tell, India is a country that perplexes, that generates debate, generates sometimes very heated debate. It's such a big country, and not unlike China. I mean, China generates all this kind of debate. But I think it's healthy for us, and that we should be so thankful that in Hong Kong, and particularly here at the Asian Society, we can still have these debates quite open and frank about all these issues: China, India, democracy, that man over there. And thank you very much for coming.